cinematic shuffle has shuffled once again, this time transporting me back about 9 years ago to a film that I've seen a few times in my life, having reviewed it though only once in written format. If you were around last week, you would have seen me give off my 3 hints of adaptation, dystopian future, and unfinished. The film in question, of course, being Divergent. The dead giveaway hint for most of you, Jacob, you won again over on Twitter, my brother Andy won on YouTube Shorts, was the last hint on the list, unfinished. Most of you know that this series is the one that unfortunately killed itself by splitting the finale into 2 parts, only ever doing the first half. They were money hungry, they took a risk, and that risk unfortunately couldn't survive, but I will say that I did read all the books from the franchise, and I remember actually really enjoying each of them for various reasons. Each of the films are a bit different than the original source, and all around they're inconsistent, but the first is probably the closest to the source material. But what does that mean? Is it any good? Well, let's get cracking. Divergent has all of the same beats as your typical young adult dystopian story. You have the world split into separate factions, kids being forced to partake in a ceremony that alters their future, and a big fight against the man at the end of the day. In Divergent specifically, Tris, played by Shailene Woodley, is told that she doesn't fit into any specific faction, meaning she's divergent, which is insanely dangerous because the government is trying to kill off divergents as they're uncontrollable, which they need conformity and allegiance. They can't just have people that aren't susceptible to suggestion be roaming around freely now, can they? Before I go on with my review of Divergent, make sure that you head over to my Twitter handle at IAMDWG, which is where I first give you guys my 3 hints to what I'll be reviewing next time for the Cinematic Shuffle. I typically do that on Wednesday. Then on Thursday or Friday, I do the same thing over here as a YouTube short. So keep that in mind, but let's get back to my review of Divergent. So like I said, this is probably the closest to the source material as the Divergent films will get, as the sequels really kind of do their own thing at the end of the day, if I remember correctly, and so they all kind of feel inconsistent thematically. The good thing about that is that if you hate this movie, there's a good chance that you'll prefer one of the sequels. The bad thing about that though is that we all need consistency at the end of the day. The books were consistent, I'll give you that much. You never really questioned what world each of the books belonged in. And it's like they recreated the world each time for each movie. But when I'm not looking at the series as a whole, and I'm solely looking at this first movie, I honestly really do like it. I think that it's definitely flawed, so when I compare it to others, it's not coming out on top. But I do like it. The main thing that I like about this film is the world building. It does a really good job at getting you acquainted with this dystopian landscape and all of the rules found within it. It takes place in Chicago, but a far gone Chicago, and for the most part I completely believed the visuals of what that looked like. Overrun by vines, shrubbery, and there's zip-line cords running from building to building. There's this big expansive fence on the outskirts of town keeping something out. It all looked believable enough to me. Also, the ideology of the politics found in this film, separating everybody into individual factions in order to stabilize conformity, makes a lot of sense, and what's even more interesting about that is that a majority of the actual plot in this film is in the background, meaning the government coup that the erudite faction is plotting happens from beginning to end, but you never really see it. You just hear snippets about it throughout. Instead, the main focus of the film is on the character development for Tris and Four as they attempt to prove that she can be a good, dauntless girl while simultaneously trying to hide the fact that she's actually divergent. Honestly, it's probably one of my more favorite of the young adult adaptations out there. There was this big craze there for a while as everybody wanted to adapt every single book found in the young adult section at the library. You know, there was Twilight, there was Divergent, there was Hunger Games, The Maze Runner, Ender's Game, The Giver, The Host, The Mortal Instruments. The list goes on, but the world building in this, in my opinion, was next level. I actually compared the world building to The Hunger Games, but The Hunger Games did a better job at crafting characters that you actually care about more, and overall, you believed in the state of the world more in The Hunger Games than you did here. So The Hunger Games, all of those movies are better than probably any of the Divergent films. I also have a soft spot for The Maze Runner, as again, I read those books which were infinitely better than the films, which again, were inconsistent with each other, just like Divergent. But at least Maze Runner 3 wasn't split into 2 different movies. If it was, it might have suffered the same fate as the Divergent movies. Overall, like I said, I don't mind this movie. I'd rather read the books at the end of the day, but I don't mind it. Most of the acting here was neither here nor there for me. I don't mind Shailene Woodley as a general rule. She was almost cast as Katniss, believe it or not. So she looks the part. And when I read the books, I could picture her in the role, which is pretty great. Same for 4, played by Theo James. They all fit the roles pretty good, and it was actually pretty interesting to see Miles Teller and Zoë Kravitz in earlier roles, because we all know they made it big since. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at my final score for Divergent, which I gave a B letter grade to. Final overall score of 79%. 79 out of 100 possible stars, meaning that they made a pretty decent film all around, and at the end of the day, I was once again invested, and I wanted to see what they would do with a sequel. It's been a while since I've seen any of the movies, so I don't remember everything about them, but I do actually remember enjoying the sequel more. I don't remember why though, so maybe another day we'll get around to talking about that one as well. But until that day comes, make sure you guys let me know your thoughts about the Divergent series in the comment section down below. Did you read the books for which they're based off of? If not, I actually recommend them. They're easily better. But as for YouTube guys, you know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next installment for the Cinematic Shuffle. And until then, peace out.